Hey guys, this week in class we're going to be taking a look at shapes. We got some pre-made shape tools over here in our toolbar in Illustrator. And if you're coming from any version other than CC, what we're about to look at is going to be a little different for you. As you draw shapes out, some things are the same as they've always been. You hold shift to make sure that your shape is perfectly square if it's the rectangle tool, or if it's a perfect circle if it's the oval tool. You can also hold option as you're clicking and dragging out to pull from the center. But when you make shapes in Illustrator CC, you're going to see these radius corners that pop up in each corner of your shape. Now these corners can be selected and pulled, and it will change the radius of all of the corners that the anchor points are selected. If I grab my direct selection tool and select individual anchor points, I can change their radius independent of the others. Or if I select multiple anchor points, I can change those at the same time. If you hold down your option key and you click on this radius point, it will give you an option of 3 different types of corners. And you can just cycle through those by holding down your option key and clicking on that radius point. With the Ellipse tool, a lot of the same shortcuts apply. Hold shift, hold option. We don't have a radius point, but we have this little point right here which will allow us to open this circle up. A couple things to know about the Polygon tool and the star tool is that each are working with particular points or particular sizes, and these things can be manipulated as they're being created. One way to add more sides to a polygon is to take the Polygon tool and click once. You'll get the radius option, which will allow you to set a mathematical radius size for your polygon and allow you to determine how many sides that you have. You can also make a couple of these adjustments manually as you're drawing. As you're clicking and dragging the Polygon tool and the star tool, you can push up or down on your keyboard and it will change the number of sides I should say, of this shape. So we can have a triangle. See that triangle has points, and again these points can be manipulated. You can do the same with the star tool. You can click once, set up its mathematical radius, radius 1 for its outer radius, radius 2 for its inner radius, and the number of points. Or as you're clicking and dragging, you can hold option, you can hold shift, you can press up and down on your keyboard to change the number of points. But you can also, as you're dragging, hold down the command key. Once you have your inner radius the size that you want it to be, you can hold down your command key and continue dragging, and it will stretch your outer radius. Another thing that we'll take a look at this week is working with the actual grid in Illustrator when we are using things like the line segment tool or the arc tool to create shapes or lines. The way that we see this is we can use our shortcut key Command apostrophe to show and hide our grid, or you can go up to View and then you can go down to Show Grid. We will also be turning on our Snap to Grid option. Now for demonstration purposes, I am going to change my ruler increments to inches. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Now this grid can be manipulated. If you go up to Illustrator, Preferences, and you go to Guides and Grid, in the grid section you can customize your grid. You can customize its color. You can change it from lines to dots. You can set up a grid line every inch, and then you can change the amount of subdivisions that are in between each of those grid lines. I'm just going to leave mine like it is. Now when we're drawing with any of our pre-made shape tools or our line segment tool or arc tool or whatever, pen tool, if we have our grid on and we have our snap to grid selected, when we draw, it will snap this line to those grid intersections. So if I need a line that's going to be perfect from one side to the next, I make sure that I snap that. And I'm going to set my stroke to a color. One thing working with the line segment tool is that you can use this really basic tool to create some shapes. Now what we have here is we have a bunch of individual lines. But if we select our direct selection tool and we click and drag over two overlapping anchor points, we can hover up here and we can connect those selected endpoints or anchor points. You could also do this by going to Object, Path, and selecting Join, or you can use the shortcut key Command J. And you'll see that as we select this and press Command J, that these radius options pop up. Now if you try to do a bunch at the same time and press Command J, you're going to get an error. It's just going to say, to join, you must select two endpoints of the same or two different paths. So we'll just join these a couple at a time. And then the last one. And then what you're left with is you're left with a shape. And the radius can be changed. Another tool that you can use is the arc tool. Command J, Command J. And then you could use the direct selection tool to either manipulate these handles manually, or use your radius tool to change its radius. And this is a new shape. Now another thing we'll take a look at this week is working with or taking basic shapes and converting them over to compound shapes or compound paths. Now what this is going to be basically shapes within shapes. So for example, if I have these two circles that are independent of each other, If I overlap these two circles, select them both, and go up to Object, Compound Path, Make, or either press Command 8, what it's going to do is it's going to convert this over to a compound path, which is basically a shape within this shape. Now I can do this for a few things. Change its color so we can see it. Select these, Command 8, and I basically have a compound shape or compound path. We see this in letters as well. If you were to take the letter R and convert it over to an object, type, create outlines, or Shift Command O, we see that we have a compound path. This can be released just as this one can be released by going to Object, Compound Path, Release. And then we can ungroup it, Object, Ungroup, and you're left with two individual shapes that you can manipulate, reselect, and press Command 8, and it will connect those as a compound path again. Same with this. Object, Compound Path, Release. Select again, Command 8, compound path. One of the last things that we'll take a look at in our demo this week is working with some of the basics of the stroke panel. Now last week we looked a little bit in class at these caps and with the aligning of the stroke, whether we want that stroke to be aligned center, to the outside of the path, or to the inside of the path. What I want you to see this week is how we can set up dashed lines. So dashed lines are going to work based on the dash and the gap. The dash is going to be this. The gap is going to be the space between each of these dashes. So if we wanted to go in and manipulate that, we could go in and set the dash for a particular size, the gap for a particular size, the next one, and so on and so on. You can also control these with your arrow keys or by holding down Shift to create it in larger increments. Now if we were to go and select this round cap and go down to our dashed line, if you leave the first dash on 0 point and then change the gap, what it's going to do is it's going to base its dash off of this cap, which will make it round. If we increase this, you'll get rounded ovals. If you leave it on 0 and then just change the size of your gap, you're going to get a dotted path. And as we looked at last week, you can go in and you can go to Object and either select Expand or Expand Appearance, or Object, Path, Outline Stroke. And what this will do is this will outline each of these as individual shapes. And you can go take a look at that in outline mode. If your path is still visible, just select that path with your direct selection tool and then delete it.